whispers crawl beneath the skin. A shadow's grin.
The Candlemas Thief. The city was a tomb with echoes. Tomas knew this because he made the echoes. His footsteps, too quick and too light, skittered over the cobbles of the empty market square, the sound swallowed a moment later by the hanging fog. It was not a natural fog. It was the miasma, the breath of the plague, a permanent twilight that smelled of wet ash, spoiled herbs, and something sweetly rotten underneath. It clung to the wool of his cloak, seeped into the cracks of the doorways where he used to beg, and filled the hollows of cheeks on the few faces he still saw. He had not always been a thief. Before the great dying, he had been a scribe's apprentice, his hands stained with ink, not the grime of survival. But the scribe was dead, his master's house boarded up and marked with the Red Cross. The city's order had crumbled like old parchment, leaving only the desperate and the doomed. Tomas was both. His stomach was a clenched fist. 2 days since his last proper meal, a lump of hard barley bread traded for his last good pair of hose. The hunger was a constant companion, but it was the fear that truly ate at him. Fear of the cough, of the swellings in the groin and armpit, of the fever that cooked a man from the inside out. Fear of the dead carts that rumbled before dawn, the call of "bring out your dead," now a hopeless whisper. Fear of joining the silent, shrouded piles in the plague pits beyond the walls. He moved like a shadow towards the Cathedral of St. Valerian. It was the only place that still showed light, a faint golden glow from its high, stained glass windows, a beacon or a taunt. The church had not saved the city, but it persisted, a stone giant amidst the dying. It was said the bishop and many of the canons had fled to their country estates, leaving a skeleton crew of the devout and the foolish to tend the spiritual flame. Tomas was not seeking salvation. He was seeking a drunken priest. He found him in the lee of the charnel house, where old bones were stacked neatly behind a lattice. Father Algernon was a stout man gone to softness, his face ruddy with wine, not health. He was sharing a skin with a grave digger, both men sitting on a bench as if the world were not ending around them. And the blessing, it's not just for show, you know, Algernon was slurring, his voice carrying in the still air. Candlemas, purification. The flames are purified. The miasma, the bad air, it cannot abide the smoke. It is a wall, a gentle, glowing wall. The very light is anathema to the pestilence. The grave digger, a gaunt man with dirt ingrained in his knuckles, grunted. So why not give the blessed candles to the people, Father? A taper for every hearth. Father Algernon waved a dismissive, unsteady hand. The mysteries are not for the common understanding. The light must be concentrated, focused, here in the sacred space. To spread it thin would be to break the ward. Here we are safe. The dead within rest quietly, and the sickness without it, it falters at the doors. Tomas's heart, a tired bird in a bony cage, beat faster. A ward, a wall of light. He had heard whispers of such things, old charms and country remedies, but this was the church's own magic, sanctioned and powerful. His eyes traveled up the vast, soot-stoned walls of the cathedral to the glowing windows. Inside, there would be hundreds of candles, thick, expensive beeswax tapers, all blessed and burning, a fortress of light against the dark. The priest's words were a key turning in the lock of his desperation. He didn't need the cathedral. He needed only a piece of its light. 3 nights later, under a cloak of a moonless, starless sky, Tomas moved. The quarantine seal on the cathedral's small side door, a painted red cross, was old and flacking. He used a rusted iron bar, a lever of pure need, and the wood around the lock splintered with a sound like a breaking bone that made him freeze for 10 long heartbeats. No alarm was raised. Only the silence answered, deeper and heavier inside. He slipped into the suffocating darkness of a side chapel. The air was different here, thick with silence and the scent of old incense, cold stone, and, overwhelmingly, beeswax. It was a clean, honeyed smell that seemed to push the clinging foulness of the outside air from his lungs. Ahead, the vast nave was revealed. Tomas had never been inside at night. It was a landscape of shadows and distant, flickering constellations. The main altar was a distant island of gold and white, but it was the smaller chapels that drew him. Each one, lining the walls like the cells of a great stone hive, glowed. Before statues of weeping saints and grim martyrs in iron stands and on stone ledges, clusters of candles burned, hundreds of them. Their light did not illuminate the soaring ceiling. It pooled around their bases, creating pockets of warm radiance in an ocean of black. And it was quiet, so profoundly quiet he could hear the blood rushing in his own ears. There were no murmured prayers, no shuffling feet. The great church was empty of the living. He focused on a chapel dedicated, ironically, to Saint Roch, patron of plague victims. A dozen thick tapers, each as wide as two of his fingers, stood in a heavy bronze holder. They were pristine, barely burned. With hands that trembled only slightly, he pinched the wick of the first between wet fingers, extinguishing it. A tendril of smoke, smelling of blessing, curled up. He did this to each one, the tiny hisses loud in the silence. The darkness grew around him, step by step. He placed the cold candles gently into a sack he had brought. He moved to the next chapel, and the next, working with a methodical haste. His sack grew heavy, a weight of stolen light. He did not look at the statues. Their stone eyes seemed to follow his furtive movements. He did not think about the altars he robbed, the small offerings of coins left by the desperate that he also scooped into his pocket. He was a single point of need in a cavern of sanctity. As he turned to leave, sack over his shoulder, he paused. In the very last chapel, deep in the apse, the candles were different. They were not the tall, graceful tapers, but shorter, squatter versions, set directly into the stone floor before a plain, unadorned archway that led into deeper blackness. This was the entrance to the crypts. Here, the light seemed not welcoming, but watchful, a line of silent sentinels. A shiver, unrelated to the cold, traced his spine. He took two from the back row, their wax cool and greasy to the touch. Then he fled back through the shattered door into the welcome, familiar reek of the dying city. His hovel was a single room in a leaning timber-framed house whose other occupants were all dead or gone. He lit a rushlight, its sputtering, smoky flame a poor thing compared to his bounty. From the sack, he drew one of the thick tapers from St. Roch's chapel. It was beautiful, creamy white, solid. He fixed it in a cracked dish and, using the rushlight, touched the flame to its wick. It caught with a soft, satisfying F-womb asterisk. The light it gave was different. It was steadier, yellower, and it pushed the shadows back firmly without a fight. The usual greasy residue of the rushlight smoke was absent. Instead, a faint, clean scent of honey and something else, something like slow water over smooth stones, filled the cramped space. Tomas sat on his pallet, wrapped in his thin blanket, and simply watched the flame. The priest's drunken words echoed. A wall, anathema to the pestilence. He breathed in deeply. The air did feel cleaner, lighter. The constant, low-level ache of dread in his chest seemed to loosen its grip. For the first time in months, the oppressive weight of the city's dying did not feel like it was seeping through the walls. It was held at bay, outside the circle of that gentle, golden light. He slept, a deep, dreamless sleep untouched by the usual visions of coughs and black swellings. When he woke, hours later, the candle had burned down only a little, and a profound sense of well-being, fragile and precious, filled him. It had worked. The blessing was real. The unraveling began the next night. He had lit a second candle, this one from a chapel of the Virgin. The clean light filled his room. He was chewing on a piece of dried fish, bought with the stolen altar coins, feeling almost human. He watched the flame, as he now found himself doing for hours. Its dance was calming. A movement caught his eye. On the far wall, opposite the candle, the shadow of the wooden support beam shifted. It was a subtle thing, a slight thickening, a elongation that had no correlating movement from the flame. Tomas blinked, and it was just a shadow again. He put it down to his tired eyes. Then he heard the cough. It was soft, wet, and ragged. The sound of a chest full of phlegm, a sound he knew too well. It came from the corner by the door, the deepest patch of shadow just beyond the candle's reach. His blood turned to ice. He held his breath, straining to hear. Silence. Perhaps it was from the street outside, but the sound had been close, intimate, asterisk inside asterisk. He got up slowly and took the candle. Holding it aloft, he approached the corner. There was nothing there but damp plaster and a forgotten clay cup. The circle of light revealed empty space. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Imagination, fed by fear. The plague did that to a man. He returned to his palate, but the sense of peace was shattered. He kept glancing at the corners. An hour later, as the candle guttered low, he saw it again. This time it was not a trick of the shadows. The shadow of his own water jug, a squat, round shape, stretched and quivered on the wall, as if something translucent and faintly luminous had passed between it and the light. A cold draft, one that did not stir the candle flame, brushed the back of his neck. And the cough came again, not from one corner but from two, a soft, syncopated rhythm of sickness. Tomas did not sleep that night. He sat with his back to the wall, a knife in his hand, watching the flame until it died at dawn, leaving him in the gray, miasma-filled light of day. The strange occurrences ceased with the sunlight, but the memory of them clung, more persistent than the fog. Over the next 2 days, a terrible suspicion grew. The blessed light worked, yes, but what was it working asterisk on? The priest's boast took on a new, sinister shape in his mind. The dead within rest quietly. With a leaden heart, Tomas returned to the cathedral by daylight. The broken door had been discovered, crudely nailed shut with a fresh plank. He circled the vast building, joining a tiny, fearful trickle of worshippers entering through the great west doors. The air inside was still, holy, and buzzing with the silence of a held breath. He walked not to pray but to see. He visited the chapels he had robbed. At St. Roch, new candles had been lit, but the stand was not full. A noticeable gap remained. He moved to the Virgin's chapel. Same, a space where light should be. Then he went to the places he had not robbed. The chapels were bright, crowded with flames, but he looked closer now past the light. He saw the worn stones of the floor, the inscriptions. He saw the small, sealed doors in the walls, the ossuary niches, and in the deep apse he stood before the plain archway leading to the crypts. The short, squat candles burned in their line on the floor. Beyond the arch was not pure blackness, as at night, but a descending staircase swallowed by gloom. A caretaker, an old man with a desiccated face, was slowly sweeping nearby. "The crypts," Tomas asked, his voice a rasp. "Are they full?" The old man didn't look up. Where else to put them? The pits outside are overflowing. The bishop ordained it. Consecrated ground. They rest here now by the hundreds, stacked neat. It's a mercy. He gestured with his chin towards the line of candles. The light keeps them calm, gives them a focus. You understand, a soul in pain needs an anchor, something to look at besides its own torment. The words fell on Tomas like stones, an anchor, a focus, so they don't wander. He had not stolen protection, he had stolen anchors. Each candle from a specific chapel wasn't just a generic blessed object. It was a specific point of light for specific souls interred nearby. He had plucked their anchors from the sacred soil and brought them to his profane home. And the dead, confused, anguished, twisted by the plague that killed them, had followed. Their light was home now, his home. The descent was swift and steep. That evening, terrified but driven by a need to undo his mistake, Tomas lit no candle. The gray dusk seeped into his room. The cold returned, the miasmas sent strong, but the cold was not the worst of it. As full dark fell, the visitations began in earnest. First, the temperature dropped further, a chill that emanated from the corners themselves. Then the shadows on the wall began to move with a life of their own, forming shapes that were not shapes, suggestions of bowed heads, of shoulders hunched in pain, of arms clutching abdomens. The wet, ragged coughing was a constant chorus now, coming from every direction, layered over with weak moans and the occasional, piercing cry of delirium. Tomas huddled on his pallet, a blanket over his head, but the sounds were inside his mind. Then he saw the buboes, not on skin, but on the very plaster of his walls. Dark, bruise-like patches, damp to the touch, that seemed to throb in the flickering light of the single rushlight he dared to burn. They smelled of sickly sweetness and rot. He could bear it no longer. He fumbled in his sack and lit one of the stolen candles, a desperate hope that its rightful light would push them back. It was a catastrophic mistake. The clean, golden flame sprang to life, and they became visible. Not fully, not as solid figures, but as distortions in the air, like heat haze over a summer road, but cold. Translucent, wavering forms gathered around the candle on his table. There were 5, 6, perhaps more, their outlines blurring into one another. He could see the suggestion of shrouds, of nightshirts, of the paupers' wraps they were buried in. One seemed to have a head tilted at an impossible angle. Another clutched at its neck, where a dark, plum-colored blotch swam in its spectral flesh. They did not look at him. They looked at the flame. They extended hands that were barely more than shifts in the light, as if to warm themselves. The room was freezing, but the candle flame burned straight and steady, unaffected. A whisper filled the air, not from one mouth but from many, a dry rustle of voices like pages turning in a tomb. Give back the light. Our light. Give it back. Lord, join us. Tomas screamed, a raw, ragged sound. He snatched up the candle. The figures swayed, their focus locked on the flame as he moved. He ran for the door, yanked it open, and fled into the night, the candle held before him like a weapon. The spectral congregation drifted after him, a procession of the damned following their stolen son. He ran through the deserted streets towards the cathedral, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had to return them. He had to put the anchors back. The great west doors were shut. As he pounded on them, a small shutter high up slid open. A fearful face peered down, lit from behind by a blessed taper. In the name of God, let me in. I must return these, Tomas cried, holding up his sack. The cathedral is under strict quarantine by order of the bishop, the voice called down, strained. A breach was discovered. No one enters, no one leaves, lest the pestilence take hold within the walls. Be gone. You don't understand. The candles, the dead. Be gone, or I will call the watch. The shutter slammed shut. Tomas sank to his knees on the cold steps. The ghostly figures had gathered around him in a semicircle, silent now, just watching the candle in his hand. Their collective despair was a physical pressure, a weight that made the air too thin to breathe. The heat was being leached from his body. He felt a deep, bone-aching cold and a terrible thirst, the thirst of the plague fever. He stumbled back to his hovel, the ghosts in his wake. There was nowhere else to go. The climax of his terror was not a violent attack. It was an envelopment. Back in the room with the last of his stolen candles lit, the short, squat one from the crypt entrance, the full congregation assembled. The air was thick with their presence. The spectral forms were clearer now, their faces voids of shadow with only the occasional glint of a fever-bright eye or the gleam of a sweat-slicked brow. They filled the space, a crowd of the terminally ill, their misery a tangible fog. The sound was a cacophony from the grave. Coughing, retching, prayers muttered through cracked lips, sobs of children, the low groans of men in final agony. The cold was absolute. Tomas could see his own breath, but the candle flame did not flicker. Frost etched delicate patterns on the walls, overlying the damp bubo stains. They did not touch him, they did not need to. They simply surrounded him, their attention fixed on the flame. With each passing moment, Tomas felt weaker, dizzier. A throbbing ache began in his groin. When he looked down with mortal dread, he saw nothing but the ghost of a sensation. The memory of the plague was upon him. They were sharing their dying with him, not by infection, but by osmosis. Their collective anguish was sucking the life, the warmth, the very will from his body, replacing it with the ghost of their disease. He was going to die here, not from the plague, but from the memory of it. He would become one of them, anchored forever to a stolen candle in a rotten hovel. In that moment, at the very bottom of his despair, a twisted clarity struck him. He could not return the light to the cathedral. That path was sealed. The church's solution was to anchor the dead within its walls to keep its own sanctified space clean. But these souls were not from the cathedral. They were from the pits, the mass graves, the paupers' fields. The cathedral had just given them a quiet place to stare at a flame. They didn't want the cathedral. They wanted their pain acknowledged. They wanted light, but not necessarily that asterisk light. With a strength born of final, desperate insight, Tomas moved. His limbs were heavy, the phantom ache pulsing. He grabbed the squat crypt candle, its flame burning steadily. He ignored the whispering ghosts, shouldered his way through their chilling forms, a sensation like passing through a curtain of icy cobwebs, and lurched out the door. He did not head towards the city gates. He knew he would never make it. Instead, he moved towards the old tannery district, where a smaller plague pit, long since filled and covered with a thin layer of lime and soil, lay in a hollow, the city's forgotten dumping ground for the first wave of dead. He reached the edge of the pit as a sickly dawn began to bleach the sky. The ground was uneven, lumpy. A few stray, sun-bleached bones poked from the dirt. The air here was foul beyond description, the very earth pregnant with death. The ghostly congregation had followed, a silent, desperate parade. They stood arrayed around the rim of the pit, their forms faint in the growing light but their attention unwavering, fixed on the candle in his hand. Tomas fell to his knees at the pit's edge. With his bare hands, he scrabbled at the cold, hard earth. He dug a shallow hole. Then he placed the stolen crypt candle into it, thrusting it deep as if planting a seed. He took a flint and steel from his pocket, his hands shaking not from fear now, but from a solemn purpose. He struck a spark, touched it to the wick. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, the pure golden flame of the blessed candle ignited in the heart of the plague pit. The effect was instantaneous. The whispering stopped, the terrible, dry coughing ceased. The ghostly figures, all of them, turned away from Tomas. They looked down at the flame burning from the soil of their mass grave. Their postures changed. The agonized hunch relaxed. The frantic clutching at throats and sides ceased. They seemed to settle like dust in a sunbeam. They did not look peaceful. Peace was impossible for such endings, but they looked resolved, anchored, but anchored to the place of their suffering, acknowledged, not hidden away in a stone vault. The light was here with them in their earth. The crushing, soul-sucking cold lifted from Tomas. The phantom ache in his groin faded to a memory. He drew in a deep, shuddering breath of the foul air, and it was the sweetest breath he had ever taken, for it was his own. He watched as the spectral forms grew fainter, not vanishing, but deepening, sinking into the earth around the little flame, becoming one with the pit they inhabited. They had their light. They were home. Tomas crawled back from the edge, exhausted, hollowed out. He did not return to his hovel. He knew the other stolen candles were there, and their anchors would still be waiting. He also knew, with a certainty that burned in his gut, what he had to do. In the days that followed, a change came over Tomas. The exposure to the ghosts, the sharing of their dying, had left its mark. He fell ill, but not with the violent, hemorrhaging fury of the Black Death. It was a milder form, a slower fever that left him weak and sweating, his body racked with pains but not broken. He survived. When the fever passed, he was marked not with buboes, but with a network of fine, lavender scars under his skin, like the ghost of veins, and a lingering pallor that no sunlight would ever cure. He recovered in a makeshift shelter against the city wall. When he was strong enough, he went back to his old hovel. The sack of stolen candles was still there. He took it. He did not try to sell them. He did not try to return them to the sealed cathedral. Instead, he became a pilgrim of the pits. As the plague ran its course, leaving the city a shell of its former self, a figure was seen at dusk along the outskirts. He would walk to the great plague pits beyond the walls or the smaller, forgotten ones within. From his sack, he would take a thick, blessed taper, now much diminished in number, and he would plant it in the disturbed earth. He would light it, kneeling for a moment in silence, not in prayer to a god who had hidden, but in witness to the dead. The ghosts did not trouble him. They gathered, silent and still, around his offered flames. He gave them a focus, not to trap them, but to soothe their restless anguish. He walked the line between the living city and the fields of the dead, a keeper of the border. They called him the Candleman. Some thought him a saint, others a madman. Children threw stones at him from a distance, frightened by his scars and his silence. He spoke to no one. His only words were the whispered ones to the dead as he lit their candles. "Here is your light, be still." His supply of stolen cathedral candles would eventually run out, but he had learned to make his own, from cheap tallow and muttered blessings of his own invention. They were not as potent, but they worked well enough. The dead were not particular. They just wanted not to be forgotten in the dark. Tomas, the former scribe, the thief, the survivor, lived on. He took up residence in a tumble-down shack just outside the main gate, between the city of the living and the country of the dead. His face grew lean and hard, his eyes like the candles he tended, steady flames in deep, dark sockets. He was scarred by his survival, infected not with plague, but with its memory, and with a duty he could never abandon. He had stolen light, and in return, he had become its keeper. A living part of the border, forever lighting candles in the earth to keep the lost content, and the city, behind its walls, just a little quieter in its sleep.
Shadows